How about those stories, huh? It's fascinating. And think of the level of opportunity you have just listening to the previous panel. Let's hear it for those on that panel. It was great, wasn't it? Interesting stuff. So our next guest is one of the great leaders in media and communications over the past 40 years. Now, he got his start as a teenager at WNBC in New York City. He was a co-founder of MTV, CEO of AOL Networks, Six Flags Theme Parks, Time Warner Enterprises, and Clear Channel Outdoors, just to name a few. He is currently the chairman and CEO of the iconic global media giant iHeart Media. Please give a big welcome to Mr. Bob Pittman.
So to put this into context, Angela Yee, who you love, and tomorrow you're going to see Charlemagne, who I know you also love. A lot of these artists work for him. He's the chairman of the company, iHeart Media, that their platforms sit on. I don't think I've ever done this before, but I'm gonna have to read your bio. Just because it's so fascinating. She just mentioned a couple of things. Co-founded MTV. CEO of MTV. Casa Dragone Tequila. I don't even want to get into where that...
Casa Dragones, come on, I know everybody loves it, huh?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know where you got interested in tequila, maybe it was on a vacation or something, but created a tequila company. iHeart's easy, I'm gonna come back to that. This is fascinating. Helped to create Clear Channel, which if you saw the billboards all around the country, you always see in the airport, Clear Channel. Was CEO of AOL Networks. Some of you remember AOL. Don't act like you know what I'm talking about. Y'all don't want to admit you had an AOL account? I'll admit it. CEO of Six Flags Theme Parks. Quantum Media. Hold on, this is an interesting one. CEO of Century 21 Real Estate. I just love this. Time Warner Enterprises. COO of America Online and AOL Time Warner. This is a bad brother. And you hire well. Nikki Sparrow, Connell, who runs, I guess you bought his podcast platform, but now I guess technically he works for you. Will, I guess who works with Connell, Andy, all these folks who sort of are the engine underneath what you do. You hire, you empower them to do their jobs, and you give them the room to run. And they all say you're a nice guy. Now, I didn't really appreciate that until I asked you what was the magic. And his response to me was, I've been lucky. That I never thought I'd ever have the life that I have been blessed with. I've been lucky, I've been fortunate, and by extension, there's a lot of people who have not been lucky and fortunate. And I think what you're going to hear now is a desire to try to figure out how do you ladder a generation of strivers up. I want to talk about your background a little bit, where you came from, because as I look in your eyes, yes, I see intelligence and hard work, but I also see authenticity. You can't fake that. So I want to know where that came from, because that communicates trust and confidence and integrity, and people want to invest in people who can communicate those things. So I want to talk about where that came from. Which was your most interesting of the ventures you created? Which ones drove you nuts and you couldn't wait to get out of them because you didn't love them? Where in the heck did Century 21 Real Estate come from out of all this other creative stuff you did? The larger context, and you had a chance to meet Ambassador Andrew Young when you're here. As you know, you would not have had a civil rights movement. You would not have had a Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. if it had not been for the media and entertainment giving him platform. I think that the media has a responsibility to hold up social justice in successive generations. And I think social justice today is through an economic lens. That's just my own philosophy. But what's your take on that question? I think half of success is marketing. I don't think that a lot of communities have done a good job of marketing themselves. And again, these are, how can celebrity and professional sports and entertainment, they're sort of intermingling these days. How can those things be used as a force for good? So let's back up and just talk about how you got here. What was the magic in your life?
You know, the magic of my life was having spectacular parents. I had a mom and dad that were, role models for me. In my house, you couldn't say the word hate. You couldn't hate anybody. You couldn't hate anything. And my mother, probably the worst thing I ever heard her say about somebody was, I wonder why they want to be that way. And I think growing up in that kind of world, my dad was a Methodist minister.
And what year was she saying this?
She was saying
what era?
This was 50s, 60s, 70s.
She's talking about black people?
She was talking about everybody.
About everybody.
Everybody. I mean, if somebody was just a jackass, my mother wouldn't say he's a jackass. She'd say, I wonder why he wants to be that way. I
love your mother already.
And I lived through, I'm from Mississippi. I
really love your mother. She said that in Mississippi in 1950?
In the 50s and 60s.
Oh, no, we're going to become friends, man. Hold on. You don't have no tie on? Watch this.
Uh-oh, no, don't do that.
All right.
It's like I could never tighten it again.
All right. I like you. Go ahead.
But it is, if you live through that period of time, it was horrible, shameful time. But, when you're born into it, it takes you a little while for it to dawn on you that something's amiss. And you talked about media. Thank God for the media, because the media sort of called it into focus. And when I started school in Mississippi.
What town?
I started in Hattiesburg, Mississippi.
Oh, I know Hattiesburg.
And there was
it's no joke.
There were colored-only bathrooms, white-onlys. There were black schools and white schools. And when I graduated from high school, it was 50-50 white-black, my class. So it all happened in that period of time. And, we're all, as adults, shaped by whatever went on in our teenage years and our adolescent years. And I think for my life, it's that. My dad was very active in the movement, as much as a white Methodist minister could be. But I think it was, you talked about how do you succeed, have these people I work with. Everything is about teamwork. Small business, large business. No one person succeeds. We succeed because we build a team of people who share a common mission. And I think even in that social justice era of the 50s and 60s, the teamwork that went on was extraordinary. Yeah. And to this day, my mother and I were watching in the early 90s. I don't remember the PBS had a show on the civil rights movement, multi-part series.
Oh, somebody help me. Eye on the prize?
My mom and I were watching it together, and my mom started crying. And she said, God, I just can't, for the life of me, imagine how we let that go on. That she took responsibility, understood the failings that went on. And to me, you say, what's the influence on my life? Those are the people that influenced my life growing up in that kind of nurturing, caring, loving environment. And when something was wrong, owning up to it's wrong and trying to fix it and trying to make a contribution to it.
And having your mother say that, white in Hattiesburg, Mississippi in the 1950s is extraordinary. is courageous. And then your dad being a minister, I think that fits well with, I think, your narrative of decency that I see and I feel inside of you. You just translated that into business, which I think is social justice through an economic lens today. Going back to that era, you would know this, maybe the audience wouldn't. Dr. King would never march before 10 a.m. or after 3 p.m. He knows why. Because back then, there was no 24-hour news. It was news at 5 and 11. So he would march and give the New York Times writers and the TV stations, ABC, NBC, CBS, time to get their, what do you call them, reels of film on a plane.
And they were filmed.
Yes, literally.
And they did get them on a plane.
And fly to New York to process it in time for the 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, or 11 o'clock news. And that kept Dr. King alive. That kept his movement alive. And the writers had to get to New York and file that story in the New York Times and so on and so forth. So he wouldn't march after 3. He didn't want to do it before 10 because he wanted reporters to get up and have breakfast. And he didn't want to do after 3 because he wanted them to get that story filed. It was brilliant strategy. He understood that it was marketing and not just messaging. How do you, can we update that business plan to the 21st century?
Yes, I think you can. I think that you've hit on it a little bit, is that what's our responsibility and how do we build the society we all dream of? And we do it, one, as a team, and two, you're exactly right. I do a podcast called Math and Magic. And part of
What's it called?
Math and Magic.
Oh.
And it's how I've always believed you build businesses and marketing is you first have to do the math. I have to know who they are, where they are, what they say will motivate them, and then I gotta have some magic. Because I can know all that, but that doesn't make it interesting or compelling. I then gotta have somebody and something or some message that's very compelling. And I think in this world, we are looking at, okay, we know the issues, we know where, how, what's the magic that gets it across? What's the message that's so compelling to people that they start nodding, they go, of course. And I think, when you start thinking about marketing today, the good news is we now have a new generation of consumers, of people, of citizens who care about social justice, diversity, all the sort of right things are actually built into their culture. And you're not going to get a young person to buy your product if they don't think you're responsible. That's a real shift from other eras. And I think for us, the commerce, the social issues all sort of come together, and we're betting on the future. I'm not sure, I'm almost 70, I'm not sure you change a lot of 70-year-olds' habits, maybe change their minds, maybe they have an epiphany, but if you build it on the 20-year-olds, you're going to have something lasting and something permanent in our society.
Yes, because young people believe they can change the world.
And they can.
And they can. And they have.
Yes.
I like what you have committed to with Operation Hope, where I've said financial literacy is a civil rights issue of this generation. And you guys operationalize that by putting ads on your network. And every day somebody tells me they heard me on an iHeart. They didn't know it was an iHeart station, but they heard me on X, Y, and Z. So I thank you for that. Why'd you do that? Does that tie into what we're talking about? But let's back up for a minute. I want to socialize you a little bit more with this audience and those watching. Can you name a few of the stars that are on some of your stations and networks so people can understand? I mentioned the Breakfast Club.
Charlemagne the God in the Breakfast Club, DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Steve Harvey, Ryan Seacrest, Angie Martinez, Ellen Kay, Elvis Duran, Bobby Bones, on and on.
Yeah, big deal. And how many stations do you have?
We have 860 radio stations in 160 cities.
Slow that down. Back up. Some folks just woke up. Say that again.
860 radio stations in 160 cities.
You're the largest in the country?
By a mile.
I I love when people just claim their vision. They claim, exactly. Making smart sexy. We've been making dumb sexy for too long. We've dumbed down and celebrated it. We've got to make smart sexy again. And see, by the way, when you got all this going on, you show up in some jeans and open collar shirt and say, "How you like me now?"
I'm too old to change.
No.
Say, give me that tie, and I go, God, I gave away my last tie. I don't want to put another one on.
No, I wasn't gonna give you my tie. I like this tie. I was gonna take it off for you. I'm not giving you my tie. I paid good money for this tie. I'm a capitalist too. I like you, but not that much. So on a serious note, you have done some things with us which I think signal what your bones of your organization are. I'm thinking about the power of all these, and in a world that's fragmented. I'm going two different directions. I'm so excited. Let me come back. I think one, it's so powerful to think about if some of these folks some of these voices get operationalized around a movement, how we could change the tone and tenor of this of a conversation in this country into something positive. That's number one. I would just say in general. Let's pick 2-3 issues that we think we can make a difference on, get Americans to agree on, and see if we can move the needle on that. So that's a positive challenge I'll leave with you. Number two, in a world that's so fragmented, where people are making money on separating us and dividing us, and you have all these different voices on your network, how do you keep that together? How do you keep it in a sense of balance? Are there some core principles that you use that drive what you're willing to do and what you aren't willing to do? Where are the guardrails? Educate us a little bit.
Well, look, you've hit it, and you've just talked about the opportunity and the dilemma.
Yeah.
We're in a country that is fragmented. I think one of the fundamental problems we have is that we're not assuming the citizen can make a good decision. So we're trying to make the opinion for them. We started a network called the Black Information Network.
Yes.
And I think they're doing a spectacular job. And part of our goal was we gave them the assignment, you don't have to care about ratings. We don't care about ratings. When there's a big news day, there'll be a big audience. When there's no news, it's okay that there's a small audience. We don't want to do clickbait headlines. We don't want to rile people up just so we get them engaged or so we get an audience. We want to be respected. And we make an assumption at the beginning that everybody will make the right decision if we give them all the information they need to make that decision. And I think part of our problem is, now we go back to what's the issue.
Yeah.
The issue is if I look around on social, if I look around on some of the stuff that's supposedly news, it is all sort of opinionated. It's part of the truth. You know, it's like in my office. If somebody comes to my office and says, Bob, do you know what so-and-so did? They get me all riled up. I go into someone's office, I say, what's going on? And they go, Bob, did they tell you X, Y, and Z? And I go, no. And I was had.
Yeah.
And I think every day we're fed stories we're had because they didn't tell us all the information. Trust me. Just give me the information. I'll make up my own mind. And I think that's what we have to push for. And we have to get information out to people. Now, we don't have to get it out of one outlet. We don't have to get it out every day. But cumulatively, we've got to get it out. And I think you say, okay, well, you've got a message you're getting out. That's part of the mosaic of the messages we have to get out. We have to let people understand what's available, how it's available, what they can do, what the opportunities are. By the way, when we start talking about a complex issue, put all the information out. Trust that people will try and find, because I think it's in our human nature to do it, we'll try and find bridges, actually. The only time we don't do bridges is when we think, you're over here and I'm over here, and oh, that's bad, and I'm good, or vice versa. And I think we've got to sort of encourage that bridge building. Let's sort of get it out and go for the facts.
Amen. There's so many, we have limited time, and there's so many things I want to cover with you, because actually I've interviewed a lot of people and had conversations with a lot of folks. As I thought about it, you're the largest, you're the most substantial by volume and assets and reach leader in communications and entertainment I think I've ever talked to. I have other industries I've been able to tap, but this is fascinating to me because this is a whole other world. And in a world where communication is increasingly everything, and as you say, we're being taken down rabbit holes and choked to death with bad information, I mean, in some ways, you've got as much power or as much influence as the President of the United States. I mean, you don't expect you to respond to that, but I'm saying, as a media conglomerate leader, you have an enormous power and influence, and I would say also responsibility. How does that feel when you go to bed at night? And how do you operationalize that? At the same time, you're dealing with a changing landscape for radio, a changing landscape for streaming, a changing landscape right underneath your legs for digital. So you're trying to keep up with the business norms, but you also have this responsibility to influence. Help me out.
Well, I think what we're trying to do is provide a platform, almost a town square, for people to air the full range of views, opinions, thoughts. I mean, none of us are 100% right, and we get great answers by everybody again, go back to teams, getting people to think about collaboration and working together. So I think what I gotta be careful is that I'm not making the judgment about what's good and bad. I'm providing a platform and trying to invite people in to participate. There was a guy who worked with me years ago, Walter Isaacson. Some of you may know Walter.
Great guy.
And Walter was running Time Inc.
He's at Aspen now, I think.
And he left, and now he's a great writer. But I sent him down here to be the CEO of CNN. And Walter was such.
Wait, hold on, wait a minute. Wait a minute, I want to have this kind of juice. Wait, did you just say casually? Yeah, I sent Walter down to be CEO of CNN. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, that's it. And
boom. Okay, continue.
And Walter, what intrigued me most about Walter was his commitment to journalism. Walter would not give any political donations, go to no political fundraisers. He wouldn't even vote because he said, if I vote, I've decided in my mind which candidate I think is better, and that will somehow subtly influence my coverage. Seems quaint today because I don't think many people are doing that, but I always admired Walter for that kind of commitment to trying to go for truth, not his point of view. And I think when you sit in my seat, you have to be very, very careful that you don't let any of your personal feelings, influence. I'm not going to take sides, but what I'm going to try and do is make sure that all the information is out there. And there's certain things that we know are important for our society. We've got to drive them through. The way we're going to do it is to build coalitions of people that will go after it. And it starts with getting the message out.
Yeah.
I mean, who can't agree with these big ideas we're talking about? And social justice, diversity. I preach in our place, we reach 90% of Americans every month. We reach more people than even Google and Facebook, the most of anybody in the US. But what that means is, how can we make a decision, because that's everybody, if when I look around the table, I don't have that same representation and that diversity of everybody. I mean, to make it really clear, sometimes we'll be talking about something for the Hispanic community, and we're sitting around and I say, who around this table speaks Spanish fluently? And if somebody goes, not me, I go, how can we be making this decision? We're not the right people. We've got to get that diversity. And so for us, I'm looking for that diversity in every way, because if we're going to make intelligent decisions, everybody's got to have a seat at the table.
I love everything you said, except you told one little fib. You said basically you want to be a town square, and you want everybody to have a voice, and you don't want to put your thumb on the you didn't put it this way, but I'm saying your thumb on the scale and move it. But I actually disagree with you. I think that generally speaking, that's what I see your company doing. But when your mother is whispering in your ear and saying, Bob, that's wrong, and I'm not going to cite the example, but you and I both know in the last year, something has happened, a couple things have happened that weren't too cool. And you actually, I know, personally said, knock it off right now. That we aren't doing. You cleaned house, you restructured, and you elevated people of color also in that conversation. I'm not going to get into details and specifics, but you know what I'm talking about, and I want to thank you for that.
Well, look, I think in a company of 10,000 people, I've got to make sure we have a safe environment, respectful environment for everybody who works there. By the way, selfishly, for that, so they can do great work. But I can't promise you that we're not going to have a problem. Yeah. What I can promise you is when we find a problem, we're gonna move quickly to fix it.
Amen.
And I think that's what we've done and what we intend to keep doing.
So I can't end this session without some gossip. You're the biggest media company, arguably one in the world. You just mentioned 90% of all people. But I'm not going to talk to you about iHeart. I want to talk to you about MTV. Come on now. Tell us some stuff that happened that nobody knows about.
Oh, boy.
Well, come on, you're MTV. Come on.
I thought we were supposed to take that to the grave.
Just tell us one story or a couple that just make you.
Gosh, they put me in prison if I did. I think it's like but you know what? That was a fun time. We were all kids in our 20s. I was 27. We started MTV, and we had no idea. None of us had done the jobs we were doing. Somebody gave us the opportunity to just go build something. By the way, everyone thought we'd fail. And the first year, I was the head of programming. I created the product. The first year, we had a projection of doing $10 million in revenue. We did $500,000. It was going nowhere fast. And
you're gonna get fired?
About a year and a half later, they said, because I think they're sort of almost giving up, they said, "Kid, do you think we can run this whole thing?" And I go, "Yeah, of course I can." And I didn't know. And we figured it out.
I told you, entrepreneurs always say yes.
They always say yes. It's like lean in, dive into it. And we figured it out. And we were the first profitable basic cable network. People thought no basic cable network could be profitable, it's ad supported. We were the most profitable when I was there. And we had Nickelodeon. We created other products as well. But there was a spirit of these, and I'm sure all of you are entrepreneurs who do the same thing, this spirit of we vacationed together, we went to dinner every night together, we hung out together, we were everybody's best friend, and we were in this together. And by the way, to this day, that crew of folks, they're still my best friends, and we still hang in there. And that's the way you make great products, is you commit, you go all in, and you just live it and breathe it, and it's 24/7. If you're not willing to commit to that, you're not going to have a big idea.
So you just unlocked something also as we were out of time, but have you guys enjoying this? We're out of time. We'll take a couple more minutes. You know, you've unlocked something. I think this is the last session, so we can go over just a couple minutes. You've unlocked something that Ambassador Young said in an earlier session. He said that, and I'm going to paraphrase here, that we made, black and brown folks, we made friends in the civil rights movement with each other. We knew and trusted each other. We understood the agendas of each other, and they pushed for social justice, generation before me. But they thought that business was evil. So they didn't really make relationships with business. They trusted the government a little bit, trusted each other. And today, in order to have a successful movement, we really need to expand, don't change your friends, we need to expand our friends to include folks who can create not just income but wealth, open the door to opportunity. I would like to say we created red rooms, Bob, where we can report discrimination and bias and police brutality. There are red rooms all around the country for people of color. There's no green rooms, accessing capital, green lighting projects, providing opportunity, providing loans, providing, hello? There should be green rooms all across this country. Well, that means we need to have relationships with people who trust us, who know us, who say, Bob's okay, John's okay, Shatra's okay, because that's how the world works. You correct me if I'm wrong here, Harvard's a great school, but no one pays 3 or 4 times more to go there than somebody place else just because they have great education. You're going there because it's a club.
And by the way, I'm going to add to your comment.
Yeah.
If you want a breakthrough idea, don't look to people who are already there. The breakthrough idea comes from somebody outside the system. So what you really want to do is you want to figure out how do you build an opportunity for people who've not been in the system, not had the opportunity, because I guarantee you they're going to have something new and something fresh. Just look at the example of people outside the system who come into the system and the big successes they have. So I think it's just in terms of business, we were talking about diversity. Look, there's certainly the social reasons why we want diversity, social justice. I want diversity for business.
Boom!
It's like, I want diversity because you need those voices.
That's it.
And I think, again, if you can empower, by the way, in a funny way, I was empowered to do MTV in 20. Who would entrust starting a network to a bunch of 20-year-old kids?
Yeah.
And we were outside the system.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was good TV and bad TV. I didn't know how it worked. And I was able to do something that was radically different and was wildly successful. I think that's true of anyone from outside the system. So one of the goals I have is, how do we get people from outside the system into an opportunity? With podcasting, we're the #1 podcast publisher. Connell Byrne is here today with me. Connell, about 3 years ago when we were starting this, Connell says, you know what, we make a pledge that over 50% of the voices on podcasting will be from diverse audiences. That we're going to start there. We're not going to work toward there. And that's what we've done. I think it was
By the way, I'm one of your new podcasters, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep,
and I think last year, I ran the numbers, I think it was 65% were
Wow.
diverse voices. But doesn't
That's
that
it.
feel like more like America? And doesn't that feel more like fresh, new voices? I haven't heard the same old thing again and again, that I've got something new. And I think that's what's critical. And by the way, I think in any business you're doing, is the big opportunity for success is to do something that no one else is doing, to have an epiphany. I tell our people at work, the work we do day in and day out keeps the trains running. What makes the business grow is when you have that epiphany. You're like, I have an idea. It's that sort of breakthrough idea. Those generally come from the outside, not from the inside.
Yeah, and just to finish the thought I had earlier, because you're too nice to say it, if you hang around 9 broke people, you'll be the 10th. So we need to expand our network and relationship capital of who we know, the people who make us uncomfortable, people who challenge our viewpoints, people who may challenge our perspectives, our lens, whether it's your mother sitting on your shoulder, or whether it's a mentor or somebody. Meet somebody who's a little different, get to know them. Telling black folks, stop just going to barbecues. Let's go get some Italian food or something. Stop just going to Jamaica. Go to Europe. And I tell my white friends, go to Jamaica. I'm joking, but I'm serious. We need to find a way to bridge back to each other and expand the relationship capital so that when you have that outside idea, you've got somebody to call.
And by the way, can I add one other thing to it? Because I love where you're going here, is that when you hear an idea or somebody's got a point of view that sounds completely contrary to yours, rather than debate your conclusion versus theirs, take the time to say, how did you get there? Tell me about the assumptions you got to that. And I find that when you unpack a decision, that I can change someone's mind if I can change their assumption. I rarely will change their mind if I shout my conclusion versus their conclusion. I'm right, you're wrong. And I think the assumptions, when people begin to knock the legs out from under some assumptions, they go, well, that's interesting. By the way, I'm saying this sort of arrogantly, like I have the right answers. As many times as not, people knock the legs out from my assumptions too. And having that honest conversation, and by the way, it can be about social justice, it can also be about business. It can be about what's right and wrong in business. The right business decision is try and go back to the assumptions. How did you get there? Those are the important things to discuss and analyze.
There's a Bob Pittman watching this, a future Bob Pittman, who happens to be black, or happens to be Latino, or happens to be poor white in rural America, or happens to be a woman from a struggling community. They're watching you. What's the one thing you can say to them to give them some hope for the future?
That your chances of success are as great as anyone else's. Have the confidence in that and plow through.
Bob, I started this not knowing how you succeeded. I now have it completely figured out. Quincy Jones says, I asked Quincy, Quincy, how'd you get so smart? He said, John, I'm just nosy as hell. I want to know everything about everything. Bob, you understood something else from your mother. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you listen twice as much as you talk. You're just very nosy. You learn every day.
Curiosity.
And I've learned from you. Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Pittman.
Quincy, as my